Welcome to the third hour of the Elias Macco Show. Still with you, and we'll be with you until noon today on this Wednesday. Now, we're going to begin this third hour of the program by talking about what is the real Quebec. When you think about Quebec, what is the real Quebec? And what's the difference between the political Quebec and the real Quebec? It does often seem like politicians are the worst part of this province, and sometimes the ways that they try and divide us. Now, we're joined by lawyer Ralph Mastromonaco in studio this morning. He recently penned a piece in The Suburban, and it's called The Political Quebec and the Real Quebec, and he's got something to say on the matter. Ralph, welcome to studio.
Well, thanks, sir, for having me again, Elias. I really enjoy coming here, and thank you for this opportunity for sharing some of my concerns with your audience.
Buy any good appliances with English labels on it recently?
I see. This is the level of crazy that's going on in Quebec today.
So tell me why you took pen to paper, tapped on your keyboard to write this piece.
Okay. Well, I've been observing things in Quebec for my whole life, and many times I just stayed in the background and watched it go on. But for the first time in my life, I am genuinely concerned about the future of Quebec, a society I love very much, and the direction that the CAQ is attempting to bring Quebec. And for that reason, I said that I can no longer be inactive. I need to get active in this. I am going to devote whatever skill set I have to setting the record straight, because part of the most important weapon in the arsenal of Mr. Legault and the CAQ is the half-truths, the stereotypes, the myths, the distorted versions of history that they, as good populist politicians, use, that exploit the fears and insecurities of people for political gain.
Okay, but what I want is to know, what's the difference between that?
Yeah.
And Jacques Parizeau as premier in the 1990s.
I'm glad you asked that.
Right? Because this is where I push back, because this is Quebec.
Okay.
The provincial government has always been, even with Liberals in power,
right,
the language hawk.
Okay.
And so if the CAQ does it, I'm like, well, geez, it's always been that way.
There's a huge difference.
Tell me.
And that difference is why I'm getting active now. René Lévesque, Jacques Parizeau, Lucien Bouchard, Bernard Landry were all PQ prime ministers of Quebec. All of them were ardent separatists that desperately wanted to take Quebec out of Canada. But they were qualitatively different and better than Mr. Legault, because none of them ever passed legislation that would bring into doubt that would invoke or override the Charter of Rights. Absolutely none of them, it's in their record, passed legislation invoking the notwithstanding clause. All of them respected the English-speaking community. Only Mr. Legault has taken the innovative approach of invoking preemptively the notwithstanding clause. But there is a huge difference.
Here's the easy retort, right? Because René Lévesque and the PQ governments of the 1970s did pass laws that led to 500,000 English-speaking Quebecers leaving the province.
Yes.
And, it or not, if you look at the statistics of the last 10 years,
of course,
and the last 5 years, I guess, is more relevant, the number of Anglos in this province has increased.
Okay. But I think the problem, Elias, is that instead of focusing on who left, we are not focused on who stayed. And that is really, really important. That's what nationalists and separatists never talk about. What they talk about is, Mr. Tilden that said those things in the 1970s and the Sun Life of Canada leaving. But where is the discussion about those who stayed? And what does it tell Francophone Quebecers about those who stayed? Those who stayed is because they were invested in the French language, saw a future, and wanted to build a society together with Francophones, okay?
Yeah.
So you cannot even compare the former PQ. If you look at Bill 96, all of these governments that you're talking about, yes, they all passed language legislation, but guess what they did, Elias? They left it alone. Robert Bourassa invoked the notwithstanding clause in the 1980s, but he invoked it the right way. They fought the fight, the good fight, after losing in the Supreme Court of Canada, which is what all human rights activists are saying. You lose, you want to invoke it, fine.
Mr. Bourassa, I got you, but again, to my point, Robert Bourassa, liberal premier, invoked the notwithstanding clause.
Yes, and then
so it's always been hammer on the head of Anglos. Now it's decades on that. Doesn't matter who's in power.
Not like this, because even Robert Bourassa was a valued the English-speaking community. He did what he thought he had to do, and he let the sunset clause work its magic. He never re-invoked it when it expired. And then, don't you recall, Elias? Oh, we have language peace in Quebec. Yeah. He was smart enough to let it go and just try to build a more prosperous Quebec, but not Mr. Legault.
I remember a 1990s that were very fraught with tribal differences, and it was on lines of separatist versus federalist.
Of course, but
here's the thing: getting rid of that, right?
Yeah.
When the CQ wins in 2018, and they say, "See, we no longer have the fights, separatist federalists. There's no referendum.
Okay.
That's gone."
All right.
And now I look at that and I say, if we were to go, we need to get back to the fight between separatist federalists, because the fight between separatists and federalists. There's Anglos and Francos on both sides. And because that division is now gone, that tribal divide in Quebec between separatists and federalists is now gone, because humans are tribal, what's left? Oh. Now it's been drawn on language. And I said, God, if societies are always tribal because we're human, what is the better tribal division for this province? Separatist versus federalist, or Franco versus Anglo? And I would love the utopia. There's no division, but we're tribal human beings.
No, I think I don't completely agree. I see where you're coming from, but I think where we need to get to, first of all, the separatist federalist battle has been won, as far as I'm concerned. There is absolutely no desire to have a third referendum. The peak. I'll say this again.
I have seen the PQ, like the PQ. So I get what you're saying. Yes. I wish it was true.
No,
but then I look at the PQ numbers, and then you've got Quebec Solidaire.
Yeah.
That's also separatist.
All right.
And so you got two, and the CAQ, like it or not, this is a party that's battling internally, because half of that party is separatist.
Right. Of course.
So we could be in a referendum like that.
No, we can't, Elias. The needle hasn't budged since 1968. If asked an honest question, no more than 30 to 35% of Quebecers want to leave Canada. Canada is really hard to walk away from because it's such a good country. You don't have to admit it, but that is the reality. Yes. Where the divide has to happen, and when Legault was elected in 2018, I said, oh my God, a businessman. This is good news.
I know.
Oh, he's right of center. He's really going to roll up his sleeves and make us all rich and prosperous. But no, what he did was he abandoned, he's a separatist to this day, he abandoned the dream. But the plan B that he has pursued is to emotionally detach and separate and sociologically separate from Canada. The new dichotomy that we need is a right-left, red-blue, but a blue that is focused on.
I'm so happy. You brought that up.
Forget referendums, forget about separation, but we may disagree on how we could build a better society. And that's what we need. For example, Mr. Duhem runs a very good conservative party. He actually has a platform. If you read the Conservative Party platform of Quebec, they respect human rights, they respect individual freedoms, and they're right of center. I will never be a conservative, but I could see having a interesting conversation with him.
But what's so interesting, right? Because then I'm happy you brought up right versus left, right?
Yeah, correct.
Because remember what I said? There's got to be a tribal. It's just how society works.
Yes.
Tribal divide. Other parts of the world have the right versus left dichotomy. And we don't have it in Quebec, because we're so secular, the social issues, all parties, Conservative Party of Quebec is in agreement on social issues with the Liberals and Quebec Solidaire. So we don't have the right versus left is almost off the table as the tribal schism. And it leads me back to what is the best version of Quebec? And I hate to say it, because right now the version of Quebec, which is Anglo versus Franco, I hate it. Completely in agreement.
But I don't agree that there's a Franco. This is 40-year thinking.
Happening.
This is 40-year thinking. This disregards all of the changes that have occurred since 1970 to in 2024 for people to still pretend that Francophones and Anglophones are at each other's throats and don't accept each other's languages and don't respect one another. I'm sorry, you belong in a museum. We have really changed.
In the streets versus in politics? Completely different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know why, Elias? They are two different worlds. You live in Quebec. I've lived here all my life. I've worked with Francophones all my life. What do you notice? The real Quebec are people that get up in the morning, go to work, and want to do the best for themselves and their family, and get along with everybody.
Engaged to a Francophone right here.
There
Raising
you go.
my hand, engaged to a Francophone.
There you go.
You know,
and these stories I see all the time. I recall being a young lawyer going out to these Joliette and being intimidated. And how would I be treated? The nicest people ever that would just accept me. And at that time, if I made grammatical errors, would correct me. That's the real Quebec, not this nonsense going on in Bill 96.
Ralph, listen, we got to leave it there because, radio, right. We have time limits. But come back. You are opinionated. And you are boisterous.
We didn't even talk about my article.
Yeah,
that's okay. I wish we did. I wish we did because
we did. I mean, we talked about your article. I'm sorry. I'm looking at your article now. We did.
Well, my article touched on the on the experience of the Italian immigrants in the 1950s and 60s. Sorry, 2 seconds. This whole example that using immigrants as the scapegoat for language issues, when everybody knows that in the 1950s and 60s, the Italian community was absolutely rejected by the educational system of Quebec.
Same thing with the Greek community.
Same with the Greek. But I'll tell you why. Because anybody non-Catholic was rejected by the Quebec educational system. That doesn't get airplay. Nobody talks about that. Where was a Polish Jew supposed to go to get educated in the 1950s?
Yes. And then we had a quiet revolution, and then we got rid of religion from our school systems,
yes,
right? The public school systems.
Yeah, right. All right. Anyway,
Ralph, thanks so much. Come back real soon, okay?
I will.
I like your passion.
Well, expect another article from me real soon.
That's lawyer Ralph Mastromonaco. Go to the Suburban website. Go check out his piece.